Okay, so since we've talked a little bit about what nutrients can do for animals, now let's talk about different groups of nutrients and what their functions are within a ration. The first group we're going to talk about is carbohydrates. And carbohydrates, their main job is to provide energy. They are made up of sugars, starches, cellulose, and gums, and this is what you're going to find the most of in an animal ration. Chemically, it's composed of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Fats and oils. Fats and oils also have the function of providing energy. It actually provides 2.25 times the energy value of a carbohydrate. At a body temperature, fats are going to be solid, oils are going to be in a liquid form. They also have the function of carrying fat-soluble vitamins. Any extra carbohydrates are going to be stored as fat, and fat is composed of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, just like carbohydrates. So proteins, these are organic compounds that are made up of amino acids, and they contain carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, occasionally sulfur, phosphorus, and iron. And then vitamins, these are trace organic compounds. All contain carbon, and that word trace just means that they're needed in very small amounts. Minerals are inorganic materials or compounds that are needed in very small amounts. They contain absolutely no carbon. And then water. A lot of people forget about water, or they don't think that water is a nutrient. They don't classify it as a nutrient. But believe it or not, it's actually the most important nutrient that an animal can receive. It makes up somewhere between 40 to 80% of an animal's body. And without it, they can get dehydrated, and they can actually die faster without water than they can without food. So functions and where do we find all these nutrients? So carbohydrates, going back to our very first nutrient, provide energy. Common sources of carbohydrates are going to include what are called cereal grains. Cereal grains are things like corn, wheat, oats, rye, barley, and sorghum. Corn is the most commonly grown grain in the United States. That's why we use it in so many of our FFA symbols. It's because every single state grows corn. So fats and oils, again, furnish 2.25 times the energy value of carbohydrates, and they carry fat-soluble vitamins. They are often provided in the grains and protein concentrates that are fed to the animal. You don't typically need another source of fats and oils. Animals that are lactating, or if they're in a fattening status where they're eating a fattening ration, they might need additional fat added to their diet, but for the most part, your maintenance ration, you're going to get plenty in that concentrate. Proteins. So proteins supply material to build body tissues like muscles, skin, and hair. There's two main sources of proteins. There's plant sources and there's animal sources. So plant sources of protein are going to include things like soybean meal, cottonseed meal, and alfalfa meal. It's basically the plant word in front of the word meal. Okay, so plant name meal, you know it's a plant protein source. Animal sources are going to include things like meat meal, fish meal, dried milk, and synthetic nitrogen. And that synthetic nitrogen is actually a source, the source of that is actually urea. Vitamins, these help regulate a lot of the different body functions, and they're designated by different letters like A, B complex, C, D, E, K. Hopefully you've heard all of those before. Most vitamins are provided through that concentrate and those feed ingredients. You don't typically need to supplement, but if you do, there's actually this stuff called a premix, and it contains vitamins and minerals, and you add this stuff to the feed to balance out their vitamin amounts based on whatever needs that animal has. Minerals provide material for growth of bones, teeth, and body tissue, and they also regulate a lot of the vital chemical body processes. And for the most part, you're going to get plenty of minerals that are provided through the feed ingredients. You probably will not have a deficiency if you're feeding a good quality feed. But again, you can buy premixes. Typically, a premix is going to contain vitamins and minerals. You can buy a premix that, if you need to add minerals to the diet. So water. I'm going to talk about water for a minute. We're going to spend some time on water because water is super important. Water does a couple different things. It helps dissolve other nutrients and it helps carry them to different parts of the body. It's a really vital factor in nutrition. It makes everything work. It's considered by many as the most important nutrient because without it, your animal is basically going to shrivel up and die. Usually it's supplied separately from other nutrients. You're not going to like douse their grain in water. Typically you have a water trough off to the side where they can free drink. They have free choice of water. Water is not something you want to regulate. You want them to have free choice of water. Whenever they're thirsty, you want them to be able to drink. Feed supplements. In the event that you need to supplement a feed, let's say that your cattle are just not eating, okay? You can add things like molasses to that. It does a couple different things. It improves palatability, which is just a fancy word for taste. It also helps reduce feed dust. So a lot of times if I have to give my horses medications and I crush it up and I put it in their feed, they know. It's like they know I'm trying to be sneaky and they just refuse to eat their grain. So if they refuse to eat their grain, I can add molasses. Molasses is fine for horses. Could also add things like applesauce, stuff like that. Mix that in there and then they think they're getting a treat. All right. Let me know, of course, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. The next couple videos are going to be on different digestive systems of animals. Fair warning, I turn into a giant nerd when we talk about digestion, so be prepared for that. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching.